Hello, listeners. Thank you and welcome back to the Oz podcast on Transformation Matters. We have an unbelievable guest today, Chris Lowell. If you have a chance, you got to look at Chris's LinkedIn. The guy went to MIT. He went to Harvard. He's like a brainiac. He also has another degree from Northeastern and has done some unbelievable stuff in the world of insurance and property casualty, but take a look at his LinkedIn. Chris, welcome today.
Thank you so much. Good to be with you, Paul.
Yeah. So first question is, who the hell are you, Chris? Tell the listening audience of who are you? Who are you, Chris?
Nothing I say is going to be as good as your intro of me. Thank you for that. I grew up in a small town called New York City.
Oh.
After sort of going to school, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I joined consulting, a really good place to park yourself and learn a ton of both skills and new challenges every couple of months, which was wonderful. I found myself actually coming into the insurance industry. That was sort of 10 years into my career. I spent a number of years with Bain & Company and got to live abroad in London and South Africa, which was super
Fantastic.
fun. It really was.
Yeah.
And it sort of opened up my eyes, right? One of the coolest things, not to get, sort of really get into work really quickly,
Sure.
but one of the greatest things about living abroad is every industry is actually done a little bit differently in lots of different countries. And when you get to see that, you get to see how multiple, 200 different iterations of the same sort of societal goal or societal role happening. And it gives you ideas for what could happen in your own country, right? So I got to work, my intro actually to property and casualty was Liberty Mutual, which was wonderful, strong supporter. And I worked in corporate strategy there, and I did essentially 3 different types of projects. I was there for 7 years, and I did a number of projects across the business with small consulting teams. And I would say the 3 different types of projects I did were international projects. So I went to, at the time, Liberty had a meaningful international presence and individual insurance businesses in 17 different countries. And for better or for worse, I went to each one of them and worked with them to try and turn them into profitable businesses. They were all sort of on a stance of being growth businesses, but I turned them into profitable businesses. The second thing I worked on was transformation of their legal operations department. Luckily for them, they were already probably industry leaders at legal operations within the insurance industry. But it's an excellent example. I'm happy to talk more about it later in the podcast. Around
maybe as things go, we'll have you back as a step 2.
Yeah, I love it. And there are other people as well. And then the third thing I worked on was understanding not just technology, but it sort of ended up feeling a little bit like technology, advanced technologies, and what does the future of insurance look like, right? So this was probably 2016 for me or something like that. What does 2036 look like? And to be perfectly honest, that's what the end of my career will look like, or something like that. Right? And it's a world that has autonomous vehicles, which the private passenger auto insurance industry may or may not be ready to deal with. Right? It's an insurance product that looks like product liability instead of auto as we know it today, and that's a massive change for a $200 billion industry.
So, Chris, let me stop you there. Let's go back a second. So, did you wake up as a kid and say, "Hey, I love the insurance industry"? Coming from New York. Now, where in New York are you from?
So, I'm from the Upper West Side.
Okay, great.
It was, New York in the 70s and 80s, a little bit different than the New York of today. No, that's a great question. I feel like lots of folks in the insurance industry do get this question. There are very few people, honestly. I'm not sure I've met any who grow up thinking, I want to jump into insurance. But I love the industry. I think today it is one of the most interesting industries to be a part of.
But let me so where did this come from? At what point was that pivotal point to say, hey, we have this thing called insurance, and wow, this is really cool?
Actually, I know the exact conversation where it happened. So for me, I was, I'd been a strategy consultant all my life to that point. And I was talking with a friend. I had a taste right after Bain. I got to run my own P&L, my own profit and loss statement, my own business, even though it was small. It was 10 people in China for an educational travel company. And I really enjoyed that. But my resume still screamed, strategy consultant. And someone said, you should go to corporate strategy and research at Liberty. Their job is to bring people in into insurance, teach them insurance, and then springboard them into the business to run small bits of the business. I was like, that's exactly what I want. I want an industry who's willing to take the skills I have and add insurance into it, and then hopefully make a package that allows me to run something, because I really wanted that experience. And it was perfect. It was the best advice I've been given, and it sort of created my entire career.
Wow. And then so then in that insurance industry, you've been in there, many years now, right? I mean, that's what you love. And so what are you really seeing going on? I mean, you started touching on it in your number 3 about autonomous vehicles. Where are you seeing, if you have your crystal ball, crystal ball, what are you saying for the future?
I think the insurance industry has been relatively similar throughout most of what we call the 1900s, the 20th century, and maybe just the first couple of years of this current century. And other industries progressed by bringing in, computers and data in ways that insurance has been a little bit behind. And I think the next 20 years and the past probably 10 or 15 and maybe next 30, I guess, are fully dedicated to putting in more capital, more data, and more technology. And not just, one output of that might be that it replaces some of the people who do, roles and jobs in the insurance industry today that don't actually, that can be helped with and augmented by technology in a way that will, both have fewer of them, but allow us to deliver more sort of value to the customer, right? Like there's a number of sort of artificial intelligence, IoT, Internet of Things, right? Will drive our ability to understand the things that are happening in the outside world, which really should be the core of what insurance does. And I think hopefully, and my hope is that insurance will shift back to one of its original theses or roles for society, which is mitigation, risk mitigation, rather than just clever risk transfer. Do some risk mitigation. Let's understand when bad things are about to happen, and let's help our policyholders, reduce those bad things so they don't happen in the first place. I think that's a huge sort of promise and opportunity for insurance.
So, Chris, go back. I mean, you seem so excited about the insurance industry today. Were you this excited when you first started out with Liberty?
No, I didn't know the insurance industry at all when I first started out with Liberty. And I treated insurance not as a subject matter, like an area of expertise. I treated it like any business. And luckily I was staffed on projects that allowed me to do that, where I could just talk about, well, let's talk about our P&L. It looks like you're growing extensively, but every time you grow, you lose more money. I don't care what product that is. That's not a good idea. Let's go through the scenarios to help figure out why that's happening. And as I went through that, just sort of years in, I absorbed enough of the insurance industry to figure it out. My big turning point, if it's helpful, I don't know if you asked, was learning a little bit about design thinking and human-centered design. And that allowed me to think about the insurance industry from the customer perspective. And in general, customers don't have a perspective of insurance. Humans don't like thinking about risk. Humans don't like thinking about insurance. I've never read my entire home insurance or auto insurance.
I don't think anyone has.
No, right? Like even people who on a podcast are super passionate about insurance can't penetrate, a 200-word document about that. But when you talk to customers and you talk to real people, including yourself, about the risks you face in life, you can create really interesting, valuable, desirable, even insurance products that really mitigate some of that risk that I would be happy to pay for. That's what insurance is at its core. That's what insurance should be. There's a bunch of like large compulsory lines in the United States that the government and the industry have sort of gathered together to make unreadable large documents that no one knows what's actually covered. And that's a shame, right? Like that's sort of like goodwill that the insurance industry has blown over the last 100 years. Because in general, the insurance industry it's a force for good. It's a noble endeavor. There's a societal role that is really core to everything about an economy. And instead, like every once in a while, we end up in the same bucket as some industries of people who aren't loved, and we should be, but we need to work hard to earn that back. I think we've spent that. But if you make really both clever, fun, enjoyable insurance products that really help people, I think we can do it. And that's sort of like I just sort of describe. I should probably like that's what I do.
But now, why do you think now is a great time to be in insurance? Tell us what you're seeing in those trends that are all coming together today that make insurance really exciting. Or more exciting than before.
No, sure, certainly. Well, one, I think because it has been a little bit of a dinosaur for 100 years, I think that puts a target on its back for new capital and new people, right? If you looked at the people who would show up to an insurance conference 10 or 15 years ago, they were all people from the insurance industry. And now when you show up at an insurance conference, it is people from all around the world, Silicon Valley, and their technology shops. And then there are a number of insurance people, but those insurance people are primed and ready to say, I like new business ideas. I like taking a little bit of risk. I want to create a new business. I want to use technology. Like they're I speak multiple languages. Like they are people who are attacking this from there. We have new talent coming in to transform the insurance industry, right? And that talent has seen data and technology be used in other industries and saying, hey, I can make a boatload of money if I come into the insurance industry and can transform it. Granted, it's always harder than that, right? You can't just come in and make a boatload of money, but there is a lot of opportunity, right? And I think that it doesn't happen overnight, right? So it has happened, probably over the last 10 years and probably the next 10 or 15 years. So I think the core of where technology from other industries is going to come in, so we can use generative AI as chatbots for customer service, because there are probably only about 50 different questions that customers call into an insurance carrier for. Like you can do that in a more automated way. That's the promise. And it's a sort of turning insurance a little bit more into, for better or for worse, the Google and Amazons that we may not love, but we interact with every day because they're easy to interact with.
Absolutely. Great. Now, Chris, do you think the insurance companies are ready for what's coming? The United States government saying in the next maybe 20 years to be electric cars. Do you think insurance companies are ready to insure electric cars? Do you think they have the correct data set in order to mitigate the risk? Because my viewpoint is I've never heard of anyone fixing a Tesla. I've heard them replacing a Tesla, but I've never heard them fixing and saying, okay, we're going to, fix your Tesla. And I'm not too sure if the auto industry or mechanics in the industry are even ready for this. I mean, what's your viewpoint?
That's a great question. The first thing I'll sort of give the full answer at the beginning, actually, which is there's no other industry who I think is going to do it, right? So insurance is the way it's done today is likely 90% of the answer about how insurance is going to be built in 15 years for autonomous vehicles. So we have to get that skill set, right? So the folks who run the claims organizations of insurance companies absolutely have to become fluent in what it means to work with a Tesla dealer versus your standard auto mechanic down the street. And the example, I won't dive into the details.
No, go for it. Go for it.
But your example is perfect because people thought, okay, well, now we have autonomous vehicles. They should be lower claims numbers and therefore lower losses. And then we can, offer this insurance more cheaply. And then you realize, all right, but for a car to see with cameras, you got to put those cameras somewhere and they need to be on the front. Well, we'll put them on the bumper. Do you know how many
Mhm.
small bumper accidents that used to
Mhm.
cost
Mhm.
$100 are now
Mhm.
$3,000
Mhm.
accidents? That's a huge problem. Then you realize, oh, I'll just take the car, I'll take my fender bender to the garage down the street.
Mhm.
Can't do that. The guy in the garage down the street doesn't know anything about electric vehicles or
Mhm.
autonomous vehicles. You need to take it to the special Tesla or
Mhm.
any of the other sort of high-end makers. You need to take it to there. There's only one of them per 100 other garages.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
because there's only one, supply and demand says they can charge a whole lot more.
Mhm.
So suddenly, electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles are incredibly expensive.
Mhm.
And then you get the customer yelling back saying, I bought this car, but now my insurance is 10 times as much. What
Mhm.
do I do? That shakeout is happening right now.
Mhm.
I will say, a sort of a different way to answer the question is, I think that the insurance industry will be ready. It has to be ready. The most important thing is actually probably not our technology and our data. I think the bigger thing is actually leadership from the top. Like
Mhm.
I am actually a strong proponent of belief that sort of culture. Someone once said,
Mhm.
"Culture eats strategy for
Ready for
breakfast."
lunch, right?
Right? And I think it's true. If you can
Mhm.
get a CEO who is actually passionate about change in his or her organization and can hire a team that is equally passionate about it, you
Mhm.
can drive change. If
Mhm.
you do not have a change champion at the top of your organization, I don't
Mhm.
really care how much money you spend on
Mhm.
technology and data. I think it
Mhm.
won't work well.
Mhm.
And I think we are at that point right now in the industry where about, I don't know, say half of the CEOs
Mhm.
are lifelong insurance people in what I would say is the old school of insurance.
Mhm.
And we're in this transition period, the last 5 years, the next 10 or 15, where
Mhm.
all of those old guards are retiring and moving on
Mhm.
and bringing in people who have different backgrounds,
Mhm.
right? I mean,
Mhm.
there's clearly sort of, a large push towards DEI, and that's fantastic.
Mhm.
But, there are people with different backgrounds, people from different
Mhm.
places, and people
Mhm.
who can see change happen and want to be
Mhm.
that force for change.
Mhm.
If that continues, I think we're going to be in good shape. If
Mhm.
somehow we back off from that, I think
Mhm.
we've got a problem.
Now, Chris, let me change the conversation a little bit from EVs to climate. So, I mean, it's a big area, right? So, are the insurance companies ready? I mean, like you hear about hurricanes. Now, I live in New York area. We've never gotten tornadoes except for the last 10 years, right? All of a sudden we get tornadoes. And when it rains, it pours now. But across the United States, as you well know, forest fires, flooding, hurricane, are the insurance companies really ready for climate change? I mean, what's your viewpoint?
Yeah, it's a great question. Also, an opportunity to plug. I'm a strong
Hmm.
supporter of a nonprofit called InnSure,
Hmm.
INNSURE.org.
Hmm.
We're a mission-driven nonprofit at the intersection of climate
Hmm.
change and insurance.
Hmm.
So,
And
answering
you're
your
a founder, right? You're one of the founders,
yeah,
right, Charlie?
I helped run out a guy along with a guy named Charlie Sidoti.
Yeah, yeah. Charlie was
Great
on
friend.
our podcast not too long ago,
Excellent,
and
excellent.
in fairness to the as complete disclosure, I'm also a board advisor on Insurers. So everyone who's listening, Chris and I know Charlie, and we're all pretty good friends here.
Thank you for your service, Paul.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
um,
But back to the question.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. One of the things we aim to do is to help insurance companies do
Mhm.
better managing the risks of increased climate change on the physical manifestations of that, the perils in the industry,
Mhm.
hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquake, wildfire, flood, etc.
Mhm.
One of the big challenges for the insurance industry is that historically, the way they price risk is by looking backward the previous 10 years and looking at losses.
Mhm.
And the problem with that is that climate change is happening now so strongly and quickly, and it's sort of it's
Mhm.
exponentially growing,
Mhm.
that the last 10 years is not as good as just using the science and trying to predict the next 5 years based on what you know about the rest of the
Mhm.
humidity, the temperature, the weather, etc.
Mhm.
So that means the insurance industry is constantly behind on their pricing. And in
Mhm.
this instance, that means they're pricing too low. And
Mhm.
therefore, when there is a big wildfire, they lose a ton of money. And when
Mhm.
they lose a ton of money, they say, whoa, we clearly don't
Mhm.
know exactly what's going on. Let's just retreat. Let's
Mhm.
step back. And that's how you get State Farm farmers, you get all of the companies leaving California, leaving Florida. And you're getting states that are, becoming uninsurable. And a lot of that is because of the backward-looking viewpoint, right? We are trying, and what we try and do is nudge companies and help companies by bringing them new and innovative data, new and fresh thinking innovators, partners from the NGO perspective, the academic perspective, bringing all of the stakeholders together to create products that actually make sense and are fair. Society needs that. And I'll put if anyone's listening, I'll put a mini scare into them, which is like insurers have the reason we're regulated as insurance companies is because we have a societal role to provide insurance. We need to see risks out there in the world and run towards them and provide products and solutions that help people deal with them. If our reaction to too many wildfires or too many floods is to run away, society is going to look at that and say, I needed insurance companies and you weren't there. We're going to find another way to do this. We could be made into utilities, and that's not good for anybody, right? Utilities aren't innovative. They don't, serve customers. They don't serve society well. It's a tougher business. It's a different model, and I think we need transformation. We need energy. We need those things to be in the industry, but we need to do our job to keep, be allowed to do that.
Now, Chris, I know you and Charlie have been talking a lot about community-based insurance. Can you talk a little bit about that for our audience?
Certainly. So right now, insurance in America is purchased on an individual basis, right? Like you as yourself or potentially your family, purchase auto insurance, home insurance, et cetera. There's also a concept called group benefits where, insurers offer one product to say, all of the employees of a company, right? What doesn't exist is something called community embedded insurance, where we create communities separate from employer groups that are likely geographically based, but that's only because of the perils I'll talk about, and offer them insurance partially because they as a community, if a few of them fail, really destroy a community, right? There's a stat out there that says if a small business after a flood loss, if a small business does not reopen after 2 weeks, within 2 weeks, 80% of those businesses go out of business and are bankrupt within a year.
Wow.
It's like the concept of getting back on your feet is critical. And depending on what research you read, insurance is either 4 times better or 12 times better at getting people back on their feet. And by better, I mean sort of more efficient. You can either put in $1 now, or you can allow FEMA, the federal Emergency Management to put in $10 later to clean up after a disaster.
Chris, just for our audience, just define community. Like when you say community-based insurance, just so everyone understands community.
I think the easiest one to think about is a neighborhood. Right? And it might actually be sort of a low income or a disadvantaged community, right? One, and for better or for worse, like those are the people who live on property that might be most exposed to climate change. In fact, the overlap between most at risk, most in need in America is massive, right? Like we talk about the news has stories about wildfires in California, and they might they might get to the house of a famous actor. That's true, but that gets on the news because we all know this actor's name or something like that. If you look at both Northern California, Idaho, Montana, they are at huge risk for wildfire, and those are lower income communities, right? Providing community insurance at a group level that it sort of incentivizes the insurer because you get a number of policies, but still covers a group of people that might not be able to afford the insurance in the first place is critical. Because if you're a neighborhood there, all the people around you, they don't want you to fail either, right? If you've got the house at the top of a hill in a town, that house at the top of the hill might not get flooded, but all of their neighbors at the bottom of the hill are flooded. The stores go out of business, and that broader city, town, village community is destroyed slowly over time. Like it's a climate change. It hasn't really happened yet, and it's a very sort of moral statement. But climate change could be like a massive opportunity for us to sort of build up civic society and community society in America again, which is a little bit on the decline. Like it's a chance to really realize that your neighbor's well-being really does affect your well-being.
We're all in it together.
It would be a beautiful thing. Maybe that's a little bit pie in the sky, but it would be a beautiful thing.
Chris, we're going to have you back as a part 2 because you're a plethora of information here. But I have a question. Is there a question that you wish you were asked, but no one ever asked you?
It's a great question. I think I've got 2 of them.
Okay.
One, however, you've already knocked off the list, which is like insurance is boring. How do you get in, and what makes it exciting? So that's good. The second is a little bit tongue in cheek, which is, hey Chris, I've got an extra $100 million. Where should I be investing it? Right. So what should I be doing with it? So
Chris, I have $100 million. Where should we be investing this?
That's fantastic, Paul. It's great that you're sort of willing to think about what to do next with your money. So, and this is an additional plug for InnSure. The climate change space is transforming the world. It is an enormous opportunity, right? So the Biden administration and the Inflation Reduction Act is putting forth $400 billion to grow an industry of clean technology and climate-friendly technologies. All right. Billions are pouring in. Insurance is a bottleneck to the growth of and the adoption of those technologies. If you want to save the planet and make a boatload of money, help support insurance products at the intersection of climate change and insurance. That's an opportunity for you. If you want to talk about it more, someone listening to this podcast, reach out to me. That's a huge opportunity, and it's one that society needs. Thank you for asking.
Chris Lowe, thank you for being on the Oz Digital Consulting Transformation Matters podcast. For all your insurance consulting needs, reach out to Oz Digital Consulting. Chris, we will definitely have you back as a part 2. But thank you for coming in this morning.
Thank you so much, Paul. Have a great day.
You too.